You say you want to let go. You want to move on. But why does your heart still race at every notification, hoping it's them, even after all the pain? You keep telling yourself you're over it. But if that were true, why do they still live rent-free in your mind every single day? Why do you miss someone who hurt you, who neglected you, who made you feel small? Be honest. You're not longing for them. You're longing for the fantasy you built around them. You're mourning the illusion, not the person. The idea of love, the hope that they would become what you needed. Carl Jung once said, "What we do not face in ourselves, we will find as fate." And maybe that's exactly what's happening here. This isn't just heartbreak, it's a confrontation with a mirror that's showing you parts of yourself you've spent years avoiding. This video will not hand you sugar-coated advice or shallow affirmations. It will hurt, it will sting, but it will also awaken you, because real healing starts when the illusion ends. The truth is brutal. What you called love may have been your shadow attaching itself to someone who kept your deepest wounds alive, not out of malice, but because your unconscious was screaming to be seen, even if that meant staying with someone who slowly destroyed you. And that pain you're feeling every time they reject or ignore you, it's not about them. It's about the pieces of yourself you still haven't reclaimed. This video is a journey into the underworld of your psyche. We'll uncover the invisible chains keeping you stuck. We'll explore why you chase those who hurt you. And most of all, we'll begin to untangle the lies you've told yourself in the name of love. But be warned, this won't be easy, because truth never is. Still, if you have the courage to face it, you'll finally stop begging for love and start returning home to yourself. Are you ready? Then let's begin. Have you ever asked yourself why you still feel deeply connected to someone who clearly brings you more pain than peace? Why? Despite the red flags, the gaslighting, the emotional absence, your soul still reaches out, hungry for their attention. The answer isn't in them, it's buried deep within you. Jung never saw relationships as mere social ties. To him, every connection was a reflection, a projection of your unconscious. When we fall in love, we're not really seeing the person. We're seeing our unmet needs, our unhealed wounds, our forgotten parts, cast onto another. This is psychic projection. You're not bound to this person for who they are, but for who your soul believes they represent. They may embody an archetype buried in your psyche, perhaps the anima or animus, the feminine or masculine ideal that lives silently in your unconscious. And what you thought was love was actually a call to meet those lost parts of yourself. These inner figures, the anima and the animus, symbolize the qualities we lack, the energy we crave to feel whole. But when these unconscious projections are cast onto someone else, they blur the line between love and dependence, between admiration and surrender. At first, it feels magical. They seem to complete us. But the moment they deviate from the ideal, the fantasy begins to crack. And what once felt like love turns into longing, confusion, and obsession. We start to bend. We accept crumbs of affection. We excuse disrespect. We betray ourselves just to keep the illusion alive. But make no mistake, that wasn't love. It was emotional hunger, masked by fantasy. You didn't fall in love with them. You fell in love with the mirror they held up to your wounds. As long as you search for wholeness in someone else, you'll remain trapped, desperate for replies, starving for attention, addicted to external validation. And deep down, it's because you've come to believe you are nothing unless reflected in another's eyes. Jung warned us, as long as you do not integrate these hidden parts within yourself, you will keep living the same story, falling for the same soul in a different body. It's not fate, it's unconscious repetition. So, how do you break free from this prison? How do you stop tailoring your soul to win someone else's love and start reclaiming the self you abandoned? That's exactly what we'll uncover in the next part, the high cost of self-betrayal and the silent war between your truth and your need for approval. But first, if this resonates with you, hit the subscribe button. This content is made for those ready to dive deep and rise stronger. Your support matters. You see, you learned too early that being loved meant being pleasing, being needed, being useful, being whatever others expected you to be. And so, you adapted. You shaped yourself into someone who would be accepted, someone likable, agreeable, easy to love. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. It helps us function, but when we start to believe we are the mask, we lose touch with the self beneath it. This is what emotional dependency looks like. You dim your light so you don't outshine them. You silence your needs to keep the peace. You ignore your pain to stay in their arms. But here's the truth. No amount of external praise can fill the void if you're disconnected from who you really are. It's like trying to nourish yourself with air. That emptiness you're feeling, it's not about them. It's the ache of being absent from yourself, of abandoning your authenticity in exchange for connection. And as long as your sense of self is tied to someone else's approval, every moment of silence will feel like rejection. Every small distance will trigger panic. Every criticism will cut like a knife. This is where the anxiety begins. The tight chest, the sleepless nights, the obsessive checking, the inability to relax emotionally. Because deep down, the real fear isn't losing them. It's facing yourself and realizing that without that relationship, you no longer know who you are. But hear this, that anxiety, it's not your enemy. It's a flare from your unconscious, begging you to stop abandoning yourself. It's the alarm ringing inside you, calling you back home. And the more you try to silence those buried parts of yourself, the louder they scream. This is when we begin to understand something most people miss. Anxiety in toxic relationships is not a random side effect. It's not just nervousness. It's the soul's alarm system going off, trying to save you from living a lie. To face it, you must go beyond treating the symptoms. You have to look directly at the root cause. You have to confront what you've been running from, your own inner fragmentation. You call it anxiety. But what if it's not just anxiety? What if it's the muffled scream of your forgotten self? The parts of you that were silenced, cut off, sacrificed in the name of love. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche is made of many layers, conscious and unconscious, and these layers must remain in harmony. But every time you betray yourself to keep someone else around, you fracture that inner harmony. And what fills the space where your wholeness once lived is anxiety. But not just any anxiety. This is not fear of missing a text. This is not ordinary insecurity. This is existential. It's a spiritual warning sign that the cost of staying in this relationship might just be the loss of your true self. Every time you force a smile to avoid confrontation, every time you say, "I'm fine," with tears in your eyes, every time you bury your needs to preserve the peace, You deepen the divide between who you are and who you pretend to be. Anxiety is not weakness. It's your unconscious trying to rebalance what's been broken. It's your mind fighting to reclaim the authenticity you've abandoned. It feels like war, an invisible battle raging inside you. One side begs to be accepted, to be loved at any cost. The other side, your truest self, is gasping for air, desperate to be heard. That pressure in your chest, that pounding heart, that restless mind. It's not about the other person. It's about the fact that your soul is sprinting away from the life you've created just to survive. You fear losing them, but truthfully, you've already lost yourself. And no message, no apology, no romantic gesture can soothe that kind of grief. The real issue isn't rejection, it's self-abandonment. As long as you seek your identity in someone else's gaze, anxiety will stay with you like a shadow, because you're chasing something outside that can only be rebuilt within. A call to come home to yourself, to listen to the ache, to reintegrate the lost, rejected, buried pieces of who you are. And it's from here, from this place of honest inner confrontation, that we arrive at one of the most powerful forces in your unconscious, the shadow. In the next part, we will dive into how your psychological shadow tricks you into repeating toxic patterns, why you keep choosing what hurts you, and how the parts of you you've disowned are secretly running the show. You think you're choosing who to love, but what if you're not? What if it's not your conscious mind making those decisions, but the part of you that still lives in the dark, repressed, wounded, silent, and in control? Your shadow is not a distant force. It is with you, and unless you confront it, it will continue to choose your pain for you. Carl Jung defined the shadow as everything you do not want to be, but are. It is the part of you that society, your parents, your culture labeled as wrong, ugly, inappropriate, and that in order to be accepted, you buried deep within your unconscious. But burying is not eliminating. What you repress doesn't vanish. It transforms into psychic energy, restless, charged, waiting for one thing, a stage. And do you know the shadow's favorite stage? Relationships. You attract what reflects your shadow. That is why you keep repeating the same emotional cycles with different faces. You switch the names, the stories, the appearances, but the pain remains identical. You disappear to make space for someone else. They hurt you. You blame yourself. You beg for scraps of affection and call it love. This isn't misfortune. This is fate. Fate built from the blueprint of your unresolved darkness. Do you constantly find yourself entangled with emotionally unavailable people, with narcissists, manipulators, or people who cannot truly see you? Ask yourself, what do these relationships reveal about the parts of you you've silenced? Perhaps you've denied your anger, your hunger to be seen, your longing to take control of your own life. And so, ironically, you end up drawn to those who embody everything you never allowed yourself to become. That's the nature of the shadow. It projects. You loathe in others what you're unwilling to see in yourself. You fall in love with what you've abandoned in your soul. It is a brutal mirror, but a necessary one. Until you face what you've buried, you will continue to magnetize situations that force you to confront it again and again and again. Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, it grows, and what you accept transforms." It's not enough to walk away from toxic people. You have to ask yourself, why were you drawn to them in the first place? That question requires courage. The kind of courage that turns inward, that dares to admit some of the chaos didn't come from outside, but from within. You carry with you wounds from the past, traumas never healed, desires that were forbidden, and instincts you've learned to suppress. None of these should be exiled. They must be integrated. So the question becomes, how do you turn the shadow into strength? How do you interrupt this self-sabotaging cycle and rebuild the most sacred relationship of all, your relationship with yourself? Carl Jung called this journey individuation, and in the next part, we will dive into this path of returning to your inner center, of becoming whole again. If this is resonating with you, my ebook, Beyond the Shadow, offers a much deeper dive into Jung's most transformative ideas. It also provides tools, practical ones, to help you reconnect with who you truly are. You can find the link in the pinned comment. There comes a moment when you realize you can't keep living split in two. You can't keep wearing one face for the world and hiding a completely different one inside your mind. That moment, when the pain inside you becomes too heavy to carry, is the moment healing truly begins. For Carl Jung, this is the essence of individuation, the process where you stop being a puppet to your masks and unconscious wounds and start becoming fully human. But don't romanticize it. This is not a feel-good path. It's not spiritual comfort food. Individuation is confrontation. It demands honesty. It demands that you look at your fears, your failures, your flaws without turning away. You will have to face the patterns you swore weren't your fault. You'll have to admit you helped build some of the cages you live in. Not because you wanted to suffer, but because suffering was familiar, because your identity was shaped by lack, by silence, by the constant need to be liked, and the terrifying fear of being left behind. Individuation begins the very moment you stop chasing those who overlook you and finally turn to face yourself with unfiltered, uncomfortable honesty. You begin to ask the hard questions. Why do I keep abandoning myself just to keep someone else close? What am I trying to compensate for? What part of my soul do I surrender every time I beg for love? These questions hurt. They sting like salt on an open wound, but they are also the scissors that cut the strings of illusion. And through this painful clarity, you begin reclaiming the forgotten pieces of your soul. Each time you set a boundary, each moment you choose silence over begging, each no that replaces self-betrayal, you're saying yes to your true self. You're shedding the mask built to please, and instead constructing a self that is real, rooted, and free. And here lies the most powerful truth of all. When you return to your own center, the other person is no longer your savior. You don't need anyone's validation to feel worthy. You don't need affection to feel whole. You begin to inhabit your own body, your own breath, your own truth. Carl Jung described individuation as the realization of the self. The moment you are no longer ruled by masks, personas, or the silent tyranny of your shadow. And when that moment arrives, you understand something vital. You never needed the person who hurt you to feel alive. You simply needed to remember your pain is not your identity. It was only a chapter, not the whole story. But before we end this journey, there's one last step to take. A step that grounds everything in practice. How do you apply all this? How do you break the bond with someone who wounded you and turn that rupture into your source of power? If you've come this far, it's because deep down you already knew something had to change. Maybe you couldn't name the pain. Maybe you mistook it for weakness, neediness, or insecurity, but now you see clearly. It was your soul calling. It was the scream you silenced for too long. A scream saying, "You've endured enough. You've bent too far. You've gone so long without yourself that you no longer recognize your own reflection." Letting go is not about forgetting. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about honoring what happened, understanding its meaning, and then releasing. The one who hurt you was part of your story. A chapter, not the conclusion. Trying to stay connected to those who destroy you is like swimming across the ocean while dragging an anchor. You will drown before you ever reach the shore. And yes, letting go hurts. You're not just walking away from a person. You're burying expectations. You're letting go of fantasies, false hopes, and dreams that were never met. But that pain, that grief, is sacred. It is the pain of rebirth. It is the storm before the calm when you return to yourself. You no longer have to shrink to fit into tight places. You no longer need to mold yourself to please people who cannot see your soul. The time has come to choose yourself, to put yourself first, not out of ego, but out of self-respect. Because as long as you fight to keep broken ties intact, you'll keep walking away from your own healing. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And maybe, just maybe, that is the bravest decision you'll ever make. Not to fix the past, not to change someone else, but to stand firm in your truth, to remove the mask, to break the cycle, and finally, to live. So tell me, what do you need to let go of in order to set yourself free? Write it in the comments below. Let this be your ritual of release, a symbolic declaration to yourself, by yourself, for yourself. And if this message struck something inside you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel deeply seen, then please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here, you won't find shallow advice. You'll find truths, difficult ones, but the kind that can truly change the trajectory of your life. And don't stop here. The next video will take you even deeper. It might hold the missing piece you didn't even know you were searching for.